And now day 3 of our series, Forbidden Zone, investing in Iran. Perhaps the biggest number for Iran this year, 64. That's the return for the Tehran Stock Exchange. It's the world's 5th best performer this year, a public relations boost for President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad's pressured government. Insiders say most of the investors are members of Iran's business mafia, the government-controlled Revolutionary Guard. We found, though, the biggest investor of foreign money in the Tehran Stock Exchange. His name's Ruzba Perroz of Turquoise Capital. 90% of the foreign investment in the Tehran Stock Exchange comes through Turquoise. Ruzba's personal story is pretty interesting. He was born in Iran and raised in Vancouver after the revolution. He has degrees from Stanford and Harvard, and he was a Rhodes Scholar. He started his own tech company in Britain and became a tech entrepreneur. We met Perroz in Dubai, the capital of business for Iranians, a city that is the top supplier of legal and illegal goods for Iran. Since he's lived in the U.S., in Canada, in Britain, I asked him why he returned after 18 years to live and invest in Tehran.
For the moment I went back, I was quite captivated by the country. But at that time, you know, I'd become a tech entrepreneur. But when we finally ended up selling the company, for the first time in my life, I had a bunch of money on my hands. And I began to go back to Iran more frequently, and then finally decided that I would invest there.
And so it's one thing to say you want to do that. It's another to say, okay, I'm going to do an investment fund in Iran. That's not an easy thing to think about. It's not an easy thing technically to even achieve. How did you do it?
Well, you know, and it started really with looking for an investment fund, because I kind of wanted to invest in Iran, and so I thought, well, you know, I had investments in other funds around the world, like a Russia fund and a China fund, and I called up my bankers and I said, you know, can you find me an Iran fund? And then they called me back in a few weeks and said, sorry, you know, there are no Iran funds, you know, no luck. And then I thought, well, that's actually a shame, and so what I ended up doing was to invest my own capital, and then it just kind of grew from there. At this point, we have about 100 investors. And
where do those investors come from now?
They come from all over. We have investors from Europe, we have investors from the Middle East, we have some Asian investors. Obviously, we can't have any American investors because of the sanctions.
Do you invest in companies that do anything as long as they make money, or do you also say, no, we don't want to invest in companies that support the nuclear program?
Well, we do not invest in any companies that are on the United Nations or the European Union sanctions list. We've invested in mining companies, we've invested in petrochemical companies, we've invested in the financial sector in Iran. And over the past 2 or 3 years, the Iranian government has undertaken a broad privatization program. So they've been privatizing a huge number of companies, and we've invested in a number of those companies. I
have here this is just a basic, it comes out every 2 weeks in the U.S., guide to sanctions. These are U.S. sanctions, some UN, but the point is it's incredibly complicated, the web of sanctions. And I'm curious as to your view as an investor of how much they're hurting the Iranian economy. Because anybody who wants to invest with you, if they want growth, they want a country growing, not shrinking. So what are sanctions really doing?
There's some things that sanctions do, and there's some things that sanctions don't do, really. I mean, what they do obviously is make it more difficult to transfer money in and out of the country. They increase the cost of trade. What sanctions can't do, obviously, is have any meaningful impact on local demand. You know, Iran is the largest country in the Middle East. It's the most populous country in the Middle East. We had a huge baby boom after the revolution about 25, 30 years ago. That demographic group is now coming into consumption age. Just
having spent a little bit of time in Iran, they all seem to want global Western brands, a lot of American brands. But are there Iranian companies that trade, that you can buy, that benefit from that demographic?
When I first went back to Iran and I walked into a bank branch, it was a little bit like going to the train station in Calcutta. I mean, you know, people were climbing on top of each other. You couldn't even get to the counter. The service was awful and so on. And this bank that was established about 8 or 9 years ago came in with very modern branches. You know, you take a number like you might do in other countries, very nice kind of setup with tellers and so on and so forth, and really going after the younger market that was looking for kind of a new way of doing things. And that has been a huge investment for us. I mean, we more than quadrupled our money on that investment alone. We've invested in a company which has one of the largest copper mines in the world, which sells its copper internationally, and many companies of that sort that haven't really been affected that much by the sanctions.
And so you feel fundamentally like you're doing something good for your country by investing there. Some people would say you're investing there. They automatically would think that's bad, but you feel differently.
Unfortunately, there are a lot of oversimplifications about Iran. I think it's a country that's to some extent been closed off from the world, and so there's perhaps a lot of misunderstanding of Iran as well. I think at the end of the day, one of the things that you have to think about in life is what sort of role you can play in the world. For me, business should be more than just about making money.
Well, the name of the bank where Peru's quadrupled his money is Carafaran Bank. It literally means entrepreneurs bank. Now, right now, Americans cannot invest in Iran, but would you, if you could, please vote? Go to our website, streetsigns.cnbc.com. Results are coming in just a few moments. We did want to, though, share some feedback that you've already been sending us over the past few days in our series so far, including our pieces on Quiche Island and the American company Transammonia. A lot of you are skeptical of the overall concept of sanctions. Barry from New Jersey captures that sentiment when he wrote, sanctions only slow down the efforts of those affected by outside interference. It's similar to prohibition in that it just creates new market sources who will make money. And a lot of you seem to feel that way. David from North Carolina, though, noted it's hard to get foreign companies and countries on board with America's Iran policy. He said the people of the United States would never accept sanctions from another country, so why would other countries accept ours? It's a key issue because, as we pointed out yesterday, a lot of foreign companies continue to do business in Iran, making it hard for American rivals to stop. Now, some of you do think sanctions serve a purpose. Stephen in Colorado was one of those, and he said, at a minimum, sanctions allow one country to protest another country's practice without a military conflict. That in itself is somewhat of a success these days, which certainly got us to thinking. Well, please go to our website, streetsigns.cnbc.com, to see all of our reports on the Forbidden Zone, including Quiche Island and Transammonia, an American story in Iran. As you can see them both here, and go to our website. Please continue to send us your emails overall on those stories, anything else we've put on in the past few days, and we'll share more of them with you tomorrow. Speaking of tomorrow, take a look at these fancy cars. This showroom is in Tehran. We have a special report on sanctions and subsidies coming up tomorrow. Yes, those Beamers are in Tehran. Pretty incredible. And we're going to talk to an American investor tomorrow who wants into Tehran. He went there and he toured the stock exchange. His story is coming up tomorrow. Next on the show, though, the results to our poll question, your emails, and a look at how America's going to pot.